Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rashmi from greytHR and today's moderator of the session. First of all, a warm welcome to one and all, and thank you for joining us today in this exclusive session of the Parichay webinar. As you know, our today's discussion is on the more significant topic, challenges faced by organizations while processing payroll. Now, you might be wondering, why do I say significant? Here it is. Payroll processing is an essential business function that involves arriving at the net pay of the employees after the adjustment of necessary taxes and deductions. In simple, the primary function of payroll is to assist the company in the timely payment of staff salaries. It also contributes to other activities such as income tax, unemployment tax, and social security. So for an efficient payroll management process, the payroll administrator need to plan the payroll process step by step. It includes streamlined salaries, bonuses, deductions, taxes, and other necessary aspects of the net pay of all the employees in the organization. Well, on this note, let's begin the session, but with a little bit of housekeeping on how the session goes. So the first half of the session, we will have a presentation by our esteemed speaker, Mr. Anurag Jain, followed by Q&A, where you can get all your queries related to payroll processing challenges and solutions answered by the expert in this session. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the Q&A and try and get answer from our expert today. Also, do not worry about missing out on any part of our today's session because currently the session is being recorded and the same will be shared with all of you for your reference shortly. Now, without further delay, let me introduce our esteemed speaker of our today's session, Mr. Jain. So Anurag Jain is a qualified chartered accountant with more than 15 years of Big Four firms experience in advising clients on tax, social security, and immigration matters. And prior to co-founding ByTheBook Consulting LLP, Anurag had a diverse experience in working with PwC, BMR, KPMG, and Deloitte. Anurag has advised larger and medium multinational clients on employee secondment arrangements, compensation structuring, equity incentive, and time-to-time support to clients on tax and social security litigation matters. The recent experience of Anurag Jain includes advising companies on assessing the impact of new labor codes. So, Mr. Anurag, it's our pleasure to have you in our session today. Over to you.
Thanks, Rashmi, and it's always lovely to be part of such sessions. Let me just share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Anurag, it is.
Thanks. A very good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for attending today's session. Now, unless you are an accountant like me or you are a part of our community, you probably might not be too excited about the topics on payroll. Primarily because it is usually thought of as a boring or a complicated and a monotonous process. However, as a business owner, you need to understand the intricacies involved in payroll because not only it is one of your top expenses every month, but getting payroll has serious consequences for an organization. Payroll is more than just about calculating paychecks. It is an intricate set of process which requires different teams to work in tandem. Payroll has a serious impact on the net income of an organization. It is also a business function that is subject to several laws and regulations. Now, because of the legal and ethical factors involving payroll, it is very crucial for businesses to do payroll and keep a spotless record of its payroll. In cases where they are unable to maintain a clean record, some of the common notions that spread within the employees about the organization includes financial stability, instability of the company, poor and untrustworthy management. With this background, our today's session will cover typical challenges faced by an organization while processing payroll and some solutions around it. Well, they say that picture says 1,000 words. And for our today's session, I was reminded of this cool coffee mug, which one of my colleagues used to keep in his office. It appeared to be a sure short way of ending an argument with employees on payroll processing. Unfortunately, that is not how the real world works. Now, numbers don't lie. And so before I move to challenges on the payroll processing part, I thought it would be a good idea to showcase numbers from some of the recent surveys conducted by service providers in this business. In one of the surveys conducted, it was highlighted that one of the foremost reasons for employees leaving his organization was on account of salary and benefits, including incorrect calculations. So if you look at the sort of like this matrix, it highlights the top 5 decisive elements for employees leaving the organization. It includes elements like salary and benefits, work atmosphere, work content, location and difficult, accessibility, and no flexible work arrangement. But salary and benefits was one of the foremost reasons for employees leaving their organization. Once the payroll systems are established, how many organizations bother to get their systems reviewed? Well, in another survey, it was highlighted that less than half of the MNCs have reviewed their payroll systems in the last 2 years. Of course, all these services were more or less on a global level and were not focused only on the India as a region, but it highlights a general trend as far as regarding the payroll review is concerned. In any case, reviewing payroll doesn't necessarily mean changing processes or providers, unless, of course, major inefficiencies are identified or the current model will thwart the future strategic plans. Even where it is evident that payroll could offer greater value and work more efficiently, the pain of making the change is seen as greater than the consequences of leaving everything as it is. In fact, the pandemic situation has been the ultimate stress test for the payroll. Some of the major challenges faced by payroll processes during the pandemic were reliability of the payroll systems, accuracy of employee pay, timeliness of employee pay, and the continuity of data security protocols. As I was mentioning earlier, payroll accuracy has been one of the first casualties of pandemic. In the pre-COVID scenario, almost 52% of the companies reported it to be greater than 90%. That is the payroll accuracy. Now, post-COVID-19, during the first 6 months, the numbers fell to just 27%. At the same time, it appears that between 2020 and 2021, the HR focus have also undergone a significant change. While in 2020, payroll was #1 priority area for HR. However, 1 year later, the correct and on-time payment of employee is less of a concern, with payroll dropping from 1st to 6th place on the list. Even comparing SMEs to mid-size and large companies also paints a different picture. Basically, the smaller the company, the higher payroll optimization is on the HR agenda. For employers with up to 250 employees, only operational efficiency, performances, management, and recruitment seem to be more important nowadays. Keeping the above discussion in perspective, I'll now proceed to highlight typical challenges faced by an organization while processing payroll. For the purpose of today's discussion, I have narrowed down the typical challenges faced by an organization to 5. So what is the #1 challenge? It's a coordination between multiple teams. Payroll teams spend countless hours collecting information from the HR, finance, expense, and attendance management teams. Even employees submit information like bills for reimbursement, claims, and tax saving records. It takes a lot of dashing around to get and collate all this information on time every month. And if you're a small business owner trying to do it all alone, it is nothing short of overwhelming. Second typical challenge is around staying compliant with the labor laws. Now, for businesses in India, all the statutory competitions, including Provident Fund, ESI, professional tax, labor welfare fund, shops and establishment have to be taken into consideration. Any issue with tax remittance or miscalculation of any of these components could leave companies at a serious disadvantage. The third challenge is around caring for the employees' morale. Now, employees expect to get paid on time for their time and work. A small paycheck misstep can affect their trust in companies and might be what makes them decide to leave. As I was highlighting earlier, almost 44% of the surveyed employees considered leaving their employers because of the incorrect payments. Dependency on the legacy methods is the fourth challenge involved in payroll processing. Now, companies might feel more at home using a paper and pen approach for calculating work hours because it is what they are used to. But this approach puts them in a danger zone. Papers can be misplaced, torn, or even thrown away. They also open the door to inaccurate calculations and eat up a lot of time. The immediate alternative, a spreadsheet-based payroll system, can bail some companies, but it doesn't really solve the problem. Spreadsheets are familiar and seem easy, but they take a lot of expertise to use as well. And the companies also need to hire and engage with employees who understand advanced concepts like pivot table, split fields, and VLOOKUP, and who can audit your formulas regularly to ensure that the calculations are working correctly every month and every point of time. Companies also need to depend on their staff's knowledge to keep the system running smoothly. And the last and the most important reason is the data confidentiality. Payroll data contains highly sensitive information about companies and cannot be risked in wrong hands. As data becomes biggest asset, the threat to its confidentiality is intense than ever before. And how do you always ensure it's 100% safety? And you know what happens if this data reaches the wrong endpoints? It can cost companies. This creates a permanent cloud of stress for the organization. Now, having seen these typical challenges, let's also see what are the common obstacles faced by the companies in India during the pay cycle. Collecting investment declaration and proofs. Now, this is a form which employees submit at the beginning of each year to detail their investment plans and assess certain tax exemptions and deductions. Payroll departments and the teams must make sure employees know how to submit their declaration and collect them in a timely manner to avoid disruptions or other tax-related confusion. At the end of the year, payroll is also responsible for collecting and verifying proofs of employees and investment against previously submitted declarations. Now, new hires. Whenever an employee is hired, the new employer's payroll team must obtain tax details pertaining to their previous employer, details which will allow the employee to be taxed correctly in their new role. The relevant tax calculation information is collected on the employee's full and final settlement, which they receive when they leave their previous employer. If the information isn't obtained and submitted, it is an employee who is required to pay the difference when they file their income tax return. Levers. Like end of year investment proofs, employees who leave their company also need to provide payroll with the same proof documents so that investment figures can be verified and tax calculated. Once again, without the proof documents, departing employees will not receive any of the tax exemptions or any benefits they would otherwise have access to and will be taxed at standard rate. Flexible benefits. The Indian income tax regulations also allow employees to design their own salary structure and include flexible benefit plans with tax-free expense components. In these cases, the tax-free benefits are often included in the employer's cost to the company. But payroll department must know how to handle them during the pay cycle to ensure tax is withheld correctly. Payroll team must also collect proof of expenses in order to grant the tax exemptions. Unclaimed expenses will not be paid until March of the following year after the tax has been deducted. Filing return. Again, it is one of the most common obstacle and an important one, because one of the most common administrative tasks for Indian payroll team is to manage numerous official tax returns and supporting documentation due from both employers and employee throughout the year. Some of these include 24Q filings, Form 16. Even at the time of tax return, when the employee is filing his or her tax return, they need to have certain supporting documentation which has to be issued by the employers. Now, bear in mind that employees' queries can significantly slow down and disrupt various payroll form filing processes at any point of time. Given the emphasis on manual documentation, company's payroll department should have a mechanism in place to handle queries with as little disruption as possible. Another important compliance component is Provident Fund. Payroll teams have a number of duties and responsibilities regarding the Provident Fund, which both employers and employees contribute. And they should be familiar with the process of communicating with the PF authorities. The team must also take care of employees know your customer obligations, KYCs, what we call as, in order to obtain UN numbers, onboard new hires, and handle any PF transfers, withdrawals, and advances. And lastly, the state taxes, insurance, and labor welfare fund. These are something which is state specific and may vary from state to state. Like in the case of Maharashtra, there is a professional tax which is applicable, but in Haryana, there is a more, the state boards ask the employer to contribute towards the labor welfare fund. So these region-wise disparity is something which needs to be addressed by the payroll team, depending upon the state where the employees are operating. So what is the solution? Now, one of the most remarkable results from all these surveys was that the payroll jumped from number 8 to number 3 on the list of HR domains that are most suitable for outsourcing. About 6 in 10 companies count on a third party to some degree or are willing to do so. Now, if we talk about payroll outsourcing, what are the key benefits associated with payroll outsourcing? Lifting the team spirit. Outsourcing payroll will relieve your staff of the stress that comes with unforeseen situations, and equally important, gives them the necessary space to focus on repetitive HR tasks with more added value. We talk about facilitating new way of working. It has two subsets to it. One is from the HR side. The decentralized HR teams benefit from cloud-based solutions to manage payroll data, ensuring better data visibility. Moreover, the integration of payroll with other HR modules can increase efficiency and reduce errors. For example, updates such as promotions, redundancies, or terminations are automatically made available to payroll. For employees, teleworkers can easily access centralized payroll data or their e-pay slips through partner self-service application, which should also offer a consumer-grade experience. With the same tools, the employees can also easily register time and attendance, which automatically flows to the payroll module, resulting in on-time and correct payments. The third benefit is guaranteeing airtight compliance procedure. Now, such issues also tend to arise from a lack of knowledge or the absence of a subject matter expert who can advise companies on best practices and get in contact whenever there is a change in the legislation. In summary, managing a payroll nowadays requires vast expertise as well as a powerful software. If we talk about lowering cost as one of the benefits of payroll outsourcing, The cost reduction can be on account of the salary cost for in-house payroll officers, training cost to keep up to date with laws and regulations, IT infrastructure and all licenses for payroll processing engines. And lastly, cost related to human errors and data breaches. As a result of the economic downturn, businesses are not only looking for ways to cut back on non-core activities, but also want to streamline their core activities such as payroll. Paying a monthly fee to a payroll partner instead of establishing an airtight in-house payroll system definitely fits the profile, especially if the company's payroll still runs on disparate on-premise system. And last benefit is creating opportunities for the team to shine when it matters. Repetitive yet a complex and time-consuming tasks as payroll can easily be outsourced so company's team can focus on more strategic projects that generate long-term value. Some of these strategic projects that the teams can focus on are talent acquisition, learning and development, and HR data analytics. In the next slide, I have listed some of the steps that companies need to take for choosing the right outsourcing partner. The first step is choosing which task to outsource. Payroll outsourcing isn't just about meaning to lighten your workload. It can also boost employees' morale. This implies outsourcing the payroll duties that are most dreaded in your HR department. For example, many payroll officers would rather be answering questions from colleagues than inputting data on absences and performance. There's only one way of knowing. The companies need to consult with their respective team as to which task is required to be outsourced. An experienced payroll partner can often process a lot of manual tasks, which take many hours each month, but in a much more efficient manner. So exactly, the company shouldn't worry too much about which payroll task to outsource and which not. The initial selection, whatever they do, is something which is not cast in stone. For example, it is perfectly possible to start out small and to hand over more tasks as your confidence grow in your payroll outsourcing partners. The second important step is to decide on the type of partnership. Now, it is a common misunderstanding that outsourcing means just completely handing over the keys to your payroll. Granted, there are formulas that come close, such as business process outsourcing, but payroll outsourcing comes in many shapes and formats. Some of this could be a typical SaaS-based model, wherein there are plenty of benefits of configurable cloud-based payroll software, from reduced IT costs to customized solution to being able to quickly scale up or down. The second format could be around on-site staffing, which means reinforcing your company's team with payroll professionals to make up for absences or to cover peak periods. The third format would focus around payroll and process automation, which means after a thorough payroll scan, your vendor will help you to automate, streamline, and document your payroll processes. And last format is one of the most common format, which is business process outsourcing. And this structural offsite formula is a strategic choice for long-term legal compliance continuity, as well as cost savings as well. The last step is selecting your go-to partner. And the success of a payroll outsourcing is closely connected to the quality and compatibility of your payroll partner. A comprehensive service knowledge of your sector and organization, flexibility, and digital leadership are just some of the characteristics that you should be looking for in a partner. So compare different parties before you take a final decision. In terms of, if I say in conclusion, the pandemic has basically tried and tested HR and payroll, forcing organizations to reevaluate their entire game plan. Which HR areas are vital to our long-term success, and how do we make sure we excel in those areas? This assessment has led to renewed attention for payroll outsourcing, as it is now one of the fastest growing segments in HR outsourcing. Payroll outsourcing benefits are immense. It ensures continuity, guarantees legal compliance, makes for transparent HR costs, and creates more time for strategic projects. Moreover, the cloud-based payroll systems are extremely agile and facilitate HR integration, Now, the past couple of years have proven that we cannot control everything, and that we sometimes have to put our trust in other people, even if it means stepping outside of our own comfort zone. Of course, every organization should decide for itself if outsourcing is the right approach for the future. With this, I would like to hand over to Rashmi. Thanks for being a lovely audience. And in case you have any questions, please raise it over the chat box and I'll try to answer the same.
Thank you so much, Anurag. So dear attendees, we are now opening the session for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A panel of your Zoom. And I can already see there are a couple of questions lined up. Mr. Anurag, I think we will start with the most common question. That is, what are the top things to keep in mind while choosing a payroll solution for an organization?
See, as I was telling, first and foremost, the companies have to take a call, which are the processes that they need to outsource. If they are plainly thinking that they need to completely outsource their payroll process, then first and foremost is to focus on what kind of a software the payroll vendor is offering them. And what, based on our experience, what we have seen across is what clients are looking at, what companies are looking at is first and foremost, how compatible it is with their present system, how well it will be integrated with their system. The second important factor is the ease of use and how cross-compatible it is with platforms. So we have seen many software which are compatible with different operating systems. Employees can access it over their mobile, have a look at their pay slips. If they want to log in their attendance using the mobile app, they can do so. So that is the kind of ease that companies are nowadays looking at. And that is also what nowadays the payroll companies are offering to their customers. So I would rather say, first decide on how you would like to outsource this process, or would you like to basically take on board a person who can basically handle this entire thing, or just completely outsource it completely to a capable service provider who can handle both the technology as well as the human part around it.
Thank you so much, Anurag. I hope that answers the question. And since we are already talking about the payroll solution, there's a question related to that again. So one of our attendees are curious to know how important it is to automate payroll in order to avoid compliance issues.
See, automation is no longer, I would say automation is something which is one of the prerequisites of a payroll system now. As I was telling earlier, we cannot simply rely on these spreadsheets. Again, it all depends upon the kind of a headcount of employees that you are having. For companies who are having 10, 15 employees, of course, they can still rely on spreadsheet. And it is something which is again cost effective and something which is quite manageable. But I have also seen companies who are having such low count of employees. They are saying they want their employees to have that service module wherein they can themselves access the software and basically download their own pay slips or submit their investment declaration. The second important factor is compliance part. Of course, technology is not the only enabler. That technology also has to be coded along with whatever is the current legislation. So in case the technology platform is not supporting the current compliance framework, then in such a case, the companies would end up with the non-compliance and then would be sitting at the risk of interest and penalties. So I would say it goes hand in hand. The companies have to look, it has to be the right software and it has to be a compliant software, which basically enables the organization to automate the entire task. Automation is something that is the need of the hour. Every company, irrespective of the headcount of their employees, should look at automation as a solution, because that is what will enable their payroll administrator as well as the employees to have ease of access, as well as ensure that the turnaround time of processing the payroll is faster.
Okay, so I hope that answers the question again. Thank you so much, Mr. Anurag. And I think this is the most relevant question since we were talking about need of the hour. So Anurag, it's all about remote working situation. So one of our attendees would like to know, in this remote working situation, how important it is to integrate payroll with attendance.
Payroll with Agilence?
Attendance.
Attendance. Yeah. It is very important because again, we have been receiving a lot of queries from companies who are not looking at only the payroll solution, but rather they want their payroll solution to be integrated with their attendance platform. I remember for one of the manufacturing companies when we were having a conversation, they wanted their biometric system to be integrated with the payroll platform. I think this is something that greytHR is also offering as one of their advantages of integration with the attendance platform. Now, for remote working employees, it becomes all the more important. And as I was saying earlier, if the technology is such that it is very easy to use, it is something which is easily accessible by the employees. I don't think employees would be having any problem in accessing the software and just punching in his or her attendance, and which is something which will be basically provide a sort of like real-time updates to the payroll team as well as to whether the employees have attended a particular day the office or not, and that will be basically linked with the payroll system as well. So my answer is yes, it is quite important, more so for people or the companies who are having remote working employees.
All right. Thank you so much. And there's another important question, Mr. Anurag. In fact, I think this question has arisen in our company too. That is, considering this work from home scenarios, the employees have been given the option of meal passes, food coupons like Sodexo as part of their CTC and benefits, right? So is it taxable in the hands of the employee, or in case of any exemptions, is there any limit as such?
See, what has happened is during the pandemic times, the government hasn't come out with any change regulation per se. What we have seen, the kind of changes that they have given is in terms of the residency requirement, which we saw in the year 2021. The second was around the leave travel allowance, wherein they said, okay, fine, you can purchase goods who are having a GST rate of more than 12%. So there was some sort of like latitude which was given by the tax authorities for a particular period of time. For COVID related deaths and the COVID related medical reimbursement also, they have given some exemptions around it by issue of the circular, and this is something that we have seen in the recent budget as well. In terms of if we focus on aspects like Sodexo, this is something for which they haven't typically provided any sort of like clarification or any sort of like clarity on when the employees are working from home, whether they will be eligible to get those Sodexo related exemption or not. If we see things from a practical perspective, even if we see things from the legislative perspective, what happened was because the employees are remotely working, their place of business has shifted from the office to home. So per se, the employees are carrying out their work whilst they are sitting at home. They are working around the normal working hours as well. So primarily what has happened is the companies have taken a sort of like conscious call around it and said, okay, fine, because if you're working from home, but still that particular space is your office only, so you are eligible to get those exemptions, which are still available under the relevant perquisite valuation rules as well. So meal passes, your car lease benefit, that is something that companies are still providing. They haven't changed any sort of like tax positions around it as of now.
All right. So I hope that clarifies the question. So Anurag, in continuation with that, for all of this, does any employee need to submit bills for spending using their cards or coupons or any passes as such?
See, for meal passes, there is no requirement to submit any bills, because what happens is the company is providing it to employees on a per meal basis, which is the limit is around 50 rupees per meal. So normally the company sets a limit of 100 rupees per day, which works out to around 2,000 rupees per month. So the employees don't have to submit it. And nowadays companies have started using Sodexos and all those apps wherein they just fill that with the electronic voucher facility, and the employees are just required to spend it at a particular vendor joints. The second important factor is around the car lease and all those benefits that are associated with it. Again, depending on the company's policies, because if the company policy says that employee is entitled to such benefits, then they will be required to submit their petrol bill, their car insurance, their maintenance bill to the companies in order to get that reimbursement. And then accordingly, whatever are the taxation rules which are applicable for such benefit, that is something that the payroll team will have to work it out at the time of tax withholding.
Sure. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question. And next question is around the Provident Fund, Mr. Anurag. So
Hmm.
the question is, which allowances, except for HRA, are considered for calculation of PF?
See, for calculation of PF, HRA is something which is exempt. So PF is typically calculated on basic salary and DNS allowance and the food value of any travel, cash value of any travel food concession, cash value of any food concession. So these are the three components which are typically considered. However, if the companies are providing special allowance, so based on the, I think I remember there was a Supreme Court ruling which has specifically said that allowances which are provided uniformly to all the employees, typically like special allowance is something that is required to be considered for the purpose of calculating the PF. Again, this is an area wherein a lot of debate has happened that whether the PF regulations are applicable only to those employees who fall within the threshold limit of INR 15,000, or is it also something which is applicable to employees who are crossing that threshold limit of more than 15,000 per month and who are basically contributing PF on a voluntary basis. So the answer to that question is yes. For people who are mandatorily covered, the PF legislation is more stringent. They are required to adhere with the laws as well as the Supreme Court ruling. For people who are earning more than 15,000, sort of like they're already contributing on a voluntary basis. So companies are not very stringent on the kind of allowances which are included for the purpose of PF for such set of employees.
All right. Yeah. And Mr. Anurag, since we are in the verge of this year end and all of that, one of our attendees have a question regarding POI. So the question is, can we collect the investment proofs if employee quits in between the financial year?
Absolutely. This is something that is a typical practice which is followed by organization, because when an employee leaves, there's a full and final settlement. Entire process is there, and as a part of that process, normally company says, okay, fine, whatever bills you can submit, you submit it to the payroll team, and based on those submissions, the payroll team will be calculating the taxes after taking into account those exemptions. So if anybody has made certain investments, if anybody has got any proof of the housing related loan that they would have taken, if they furnish those documents, then the companies will take it into account and factor it in while calculating the final taxes at the time of full and final settlement.
All right. Thank you so much, Anurag. And next question is about the leave encashment. So
Yeah.
calculating leave encashment based on last drawn basic pay, or it has to be last drawn fixed gross salary. Which one is right?
I would say the first one, the last drawn basic.
Basic pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So I think that was pretty straightforward. And Anurag, next interesting question we have from one of our attendees is it really necessary to have a knowledge of payroll for a HR person?
That's a good question. See, it all depends, because I think payroll is a part of HR. What we have typically seen is companies wherever they have HR department as one of the verticals comprises of payroll. And so I would say any person who is a HR professional, and because HR involves dealing with the employees on a day in day out basis, I would rather say it's a sort of like a prerequisite for such a HR professional to have knowledge of payroll. And for having the knowledge of payroll, you also need to have a little bit knowledge about the Indian taxation laws as well as other labor law regime as well. So I would rather say it is a prerequisite for a HR professional to have some, or rather a good bit of knowledge about the payroll and the associated knowledge of taxation and other labor laws as well.
Yeah, I think in simple, we can say it makes us a wholesome package for any HR professional if you know about payroll, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so going on to the next question. So it is about startup. So one of our attendees have this question. So we are a startup company having 22 employees currently and started PF. That is the threshold of 1,800 to every employee in the month of Jan. But one of them saying that he will not pay his PF contribution, but only employer is supposed to pay. So is it right, or that employee also needs to pay his PF?
No, so once the organization crosses a threshold limit of 20 or more than 20 employees, there's a mandatory requirement for an organization to comply with the PF legislation. Now, in terms of your employees, there are two sets of employees for which the compliance is required to be done. Employees who are new joinees who are joining the organization for the first time and who are having a basic salary of more than 15,000 per month. In such a case, the organization can give an option to the employee whether they would like to contribute towards the provident fund or not, because for them, the applicability of the provident fund is on a voluntary basis. The second set of employees are those who are earning up to 15,000 or less than that. For them, there's a mandatory requirement to contribute. And when we talk about mandatory contribution, it is both the employer and the employee contribution. Okay. The third set of employees are those who are coming from the previous organization. They have already served in a previous organization. Their PF account is already operational. For them, again, there is no option. They would have to contribute to provident fund on a mandatory basis.
All right. So I hope that answers the question. So Anurag, next question is what are included in flexible benefit components?
The flexible benefit components, it all depends upon the company policies. Many companies are quite aggressive in terms of the kind of flexi baskets that they offer. Typically, flexi benefits comprises of components like telephone reimbursements, car lease, or car. If it's an employee-owned car, then a reimbursement for petrol, maintenance. It can also comprise of components like Sodexo and meal passes. So again, it is something which is a call of the company, how they have structured their policy around the flexi basket. Some companies are very conservative and they offer a very few components as a flexi basket. Some companies are more generous and they offer whatever is there under the taxation law, which provides tax benefits. NPS is another good component which forms part of the flexi basket nowadays.
Sure. And next question is, Anurag, about the basic salary. So the question is it mandatory that basic salary should be 50% of CTC?
It's if we talk, keeping aside what has come up in labor codes, I would rather say keeping your 40 to 50% of CTC as basic is a general industry norm. The reason for this is if you keep your basic at 40 to 50% of the CTC, the chances of PF authorities coming and questioning and saying that you are basically subterfuging or basically allocating allowances to basically reduce your PF liabilities on the lower side. 40 to 50% is typically what PF authorities say is a normal acceptable trend. I have seen companies who keep their basic at 20 to 25% of their CTC, and normally these companies face a good amount of questions from the PF authorities for their compensation structure model.
Sure. So next question is, what are the non-taxable components that can be considered for a salary structure?
See, non-taxable components comprises of typically like education allowance. Again, the limits are quite nominal. Hostel expenditure allowance for the children. Telephone reimbursement is something that companies can look at. Sodexo coupons. Again, it can be exempt up to 24,000 a year. In case it is an employee-owned car, they can think of providing the company can think of providing a reimbursement for driver and petrol and maintenance reimbursement. Car lease is another big component because what happens is provides a good advantage, particularly for the senior as well as the middle level management, wherein the companies can reimburse them, and then there are a flat rate of taxation which is applicable irrespective of the amount of reimbursement that the company offers. Again, a lot of benchmarking and all those things have to be done by the companies to ensure that whatever components they are offering is in line with the general industry practices.
Sure. Okay. And also, Anurag, this might sound as a common question, but I think this is also important for all of us to know. So the question is, can I know the steps for payroll processing?
The steps for payroll processing, that is a sort of like very detailed discussion. Unfortunately, I can't address it over this forum, but if this person shares his contact details, then obviously we can reach out and basically tell them and explain them what are the complete steps of payroll processes.
Sure. Anurag, in fact, I'll just share your mail ID with this attendee so
Yeah,
that he or she can get in touch with you.
absolutely.
So, dear attendee, your question has reached out to us, and Mr. Anurag would be more than happy to answer it. We will be providing Mr. Anurag's email ID by end of the session. So, you can definitely get in touch with him and get all the guidance that you need on payroll. All right. So, I hope you're happy with that for now. And I'll just move on to the next question. So the question is there any rule to calculate the leave encashment for 26 days or 30 days based on the available earned leaves at the time of full and final settlement?
Is there any rule to calculate? Yeah, in fact, income tax rules basically specify certain limit. Unfortunately, it is not at the top of my mind. I think there was a limit of 26 days, which was mentioned in the income tax rule. But again, I would ask the gentleman to just refer to the income tax rule. The income tax rules basically specifies how the calculation formula for the leave encashment works in such scenario.
Sure. All right. So I'll move on to the next question, Anurag. It's about new labor laws. So the question is, in the new labor laws, there is a provision of payment of full and final settlement to the leavers within a very less time. So what do you think? Will it be creating a new challenge for the companies, and how can we take care of that?
Absolutely. I mean, it is one of the challenging areas of the new labor laws, wherein they have prescribed the timelines of 2 days of settlement in case of a FNF. But for certain benefits like gratuity, the timelines continue to remain as 30 days. So what we are seeing is that it will create a major challenge, because typically companies do take anywhere between 30 to 45 days, because it's a process which is not dedicated to one vertical. It is something for which the clearance has to be taken from the IT, from the payroll, from the legal team, for the HR, and from your immediate bosses as well. So all these clearances normally takes a lot of time. And so 2 days is something which is quite impractical, in my personal opinion. And I remember we have done a lot of representation before the Labor Ministry. We have told them that this is something that is clearly not possible for the companies to implement, particularly in terms of the entire life cycle of settling the full and final for the employees. So we'll have to wait and watch and see whether the government authorities would take cognizance of this practical difficulty, and whether increase this limit to at least 15 to 30 days range.
Okay. All right. So the next question is about LTA. So employer is not giving the LTA. So the employee can claim the LTA. If yes, what is the limit? And if employer is giving the LTA, then what is the limit? So the attendee would like to know both the cases now.
See, if the employer is not giving the LTA as a part of compensation structure, then the employees cannot start claiming it in their tax return filing. It's a similar to if the employee doesn't, if the employer organization doesn't give you HRA, the employer can't themselves go and start claiming the HRA benefits at the time of filing the return of income. Even if they do it, the flip side to it is that it could risk audit by the income tax authorities. In terms of the LTA limits, there is no per se limits which is prescribed. I think we can take reference from the last year amendment when they specified a limit of around 36,000 per person. So that could be a sort of like reference or a guide for an organization to fix the LTA limit. We have seen companies also fix LTA at a 1 month's basic salary as well. So that is a sort of like general limit that normally companies fix. But as far as regarding, if we say under the current tax regime, is there any hard limit which has been coded in the legislation? The answer is no. They just mentioned that the companies can provide a leave travel concession benefits based on the documentation furnished by the employees. And this is all for travel within India only. And it has to be, there's a block of 4 years within which such benefits can be availed. So, I mean, these are the sort of like rules which is prescribed under the income tax legislation.
Sure. I think that's mostly helpful answer that you have given us, Anurag. And the next one is about, can you please explain about bonus or incentive scheme?
See, bonus or incentive scheme is again depending upon the company. So there's a payment of bonus act, which is mandatorily applicable for certain level of employees. But for employees who are not covered under the mandatory payment of bonus act, then it is all variable part, which is something again depending upon the company, the type of organization. Some organization like to typically link it with the performance of the employees as well as the performance of the company as well. So there is no hard and fast rule for employees who are not covered under the payment of bonus act. For employees who are covered under the payment of bonus act, the companies have to satisfy certain criteria before they make such a payment, bonus payment to their employees.
Sure. And next question is about minimum wages and other allowances. So the question is, where can we find minimum wages and dearness allowance for a particular state? Is there a common website to know statutory updates such as PF, ESIC, PT in a simplified manner?
See, there's not a single website in which person can access all this. For PF, I would say the best source is the EPFO site. For ESIC, again, there's a respective site of the government authorities. Professional tax is something which is state specific. For minimum wages, I would suggest the concerned person to go to the relevant state government site. Therein they have mentioned all the circulars, all the legislation around the minimum wages, and they also prescribe the limits for the minimum wages. So the answer in summary is there's not a single website which will basically address all these queries. The person will have to go to the respective department's website and access the circulars or the legislation around it.
Sure. Thank you, Anurag. And dear attendees, as you can see, we are running short of time. We are just left with 2 more minutes. But please don't be disappointed if any of your questions are unanswered. What we have done is we have shared Mr. Anurag's mail ID in the chat box. You can always get in touch with Mr. Anurag through the mail, or else you can also reach out to us or to Mr. Anurag through our community platform, greytHR. So I'll give you more details about our community platform, greytHR, soon. But before that, let me take up one last question for the day. So this question is around gratuity. So the attendee would like to know about gratuity. So the thing is, they have started gratuity in their company, and currently they have 22 employees. So can you please tell us the procedure for it?
See, gratuity is again sort of like mandatory legislation for organizations who are having 10 or more than 10 employees. The way the companies normally start is there are sort of like 3 routes by which companies can start their gratuity. One is by creating a provision in their books. The second is around getting an insurance from the IRDA authorized insurance companies. The third is something wherein the companies create an approved gratuity trust. And by way of approved gratuity trust mean those trusts which gets the approval from the Commissioner of Income Tax. So basically there are 3 ways in which companies can start the gratuity benefits to their employees. Whenever a gratuity is applicable to a company, they have to take a call whether they would like to recover the gratuity or make it a part of a CTC of the company of that employee, or they would want to give the gratuity benefits which is over and above the CTC. So again, that is a call that a company has to take. There is no sort of like hard and fast rules around it. But as far as regarding compulsory insurance is concerned, if we look at the gratuity legislation, it says somewhere down the line that the company has to get a compulsory insurance. But again, power has been given to the state legislation. Under the present gratuity legislation, it is only the state of Andhra Pradesh which has come out with the legislation for organizations to get a compulsory insurance. So that's why we see many organizations who don't take a compulsory insurance or who don't even form a approved gratuity trust. Rather, they just create a provision in their books. Of course, when you create a provision in your books, there are sort of like aspects around taxation, the corporate tax deduction, which one needs to adhere. Normally, simply creating a provision in the books doesn't allow the company to take a deduction at the time of filing their corporate tax return. In such a case, at the time of actual payment of gratuity, they would be allowed to get a deduction.
Sure. So I think that pretty much answers the question, and dear attendees, we have tried our best to take up your questions, but as we are running short of time, I think we are now close to end the session. Anurag, if you don't mind, can you please stop sharing your screen so that I can share further
Sure.
details? Yeah.
Sure.
All right, thank you so much. So dear attendees, we have already dropped in Mr. Anurag Jain's email ID in the chat box. You can already see that Sharmishta has done it for us. Thank you, Sharmishta. And if you have any other questions, here is the link for our Grey Tribe community. To tell you about Grey Tribe, it's the Q&A forum, basically the new initiative from greytHR, where the HR peers, just like you and me, collaborate, come to a common platform and start sharing their knowledge. So if you have any doubts or questions about anything related to the HR industry or the statutory compliances, please drop in your questions there. And many HR professionals like you who are already part of it will be happy to answer your questions. And not just that, we also have expert panel. Like Mr. Anurag Jain, we have around 10 plus industry experts who are already part of this Grey Tribe community. You can also expect the answers from them on this platform. And this is completely free of cost. So please feel free to sign up and join Grey Tribe community. And here is the link for you. All right. So I think on this note, it's now time to end the session. Now, having discussed the challenges and solutions, all I can say is employees need to be able to rely on being paid on a consistent basis without delays, right? Only then you can say that your payroll processing is efficient and is good enough, right? So payroll affects every aspect of business, whether it is SME, MSME, or larger business units, right? And not just that, it affects in such a way, right from the moral of the employees to the financial stability of the company. So considering all of this, I think payroll processing has to be in place for any organization. So on this note, I think whatever Mr. Anurag Jain has shared with us today has helped us a lot. So I would like to thank Mr. Anurag for providing such useful and informative session to all of us, sir. And also, dear attendees, thank you for attending the session and making it successful. And for the recording and the presentation, you can expect the mail or the link to the access of recording from Sharmishta. You'll be getting it soon. All right. So on this note, I'm going to end the session now.